Okie dokie. G'day everyone. My name's Travis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TourRadar. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today as one of the first cabs off the ranks, or one of the first Ubers off the ranks on a very action-packed kind of agenda. So yeah, feel very privileged to be here. Today, I'm not going to be talking about the kind of usual things that go into a marketplace. I thought, using the benefit of hindsight, I wanted to actually share some of the experiences that I've had where at the time they didn't really seem so relevant, but it was only after I went through and did some of these things that they became more apparent. So yeah, just wanted to reflect on those, and hopefully you can take away one or two things that help you in your marketplace and scaling that. So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about TourRadar, who we are, what we do. Then I'll go into people. Then we talk about supply. And then we'll talk about attribution. So supply seems something that everyone is doing, but there's a bit of a different spin on it that I'll try and bring to it. So what is it that TourRadar does? We are a marketplace, a travel marketplace. We connect tour operators to travelers all over the world. We aggregate some 1,000 tour operators, and multi-day tours is our thing. So think of a trek to Kilimanjaro, think about a kayaking trip in Costa Rica, think about going to Thailand and cycling around, or Cambodia. So where you have a tour guide, you have accommodation, you have the transport included. Typically 12 to 14 days is the trip length that we sell. And the difference with our marketplace is a little bit that it's not the usual one. So in terms of, we have high basket sizes, so 2,000 euros is the average basket. We have basically not really high, often repeat rates. So people are booking a tour once a year. We have decent margins to play with, but we don't have that high repeatability. So in terms of how we have to deal with acquiring customers is very different to if you have a high volume marketplace, which is low basket sizes, high repeat rates. That's obviously a different way to look at things, and we've experienced some challenges along the way with that. Our vision is to connect people to life-enriching travel experiences. We like to think it's a nice vision. It's something we like to come to work for. We're not building widgets. We're not doing anything like that. We're sending people on amazing trips all over the world, and that helps a lot in terms of hiring and that sort of thing. This is a slide that I'm sure going to be showing quite a few times today. Network effects. This is something that obviously is important, but it's not everything. And I think there's some underlying things around it that aren't mentioned and aren't talked about, and that's something that I'd like to run through today. So obviously, one of the topics I want to talk about is supply today, but the other two topics are actually not in this network diagram. So first of all, people. It might seem obvious, you need people, you need actually a great team. It's talked about a lot, but I've had the privilege to experience something in the last year and a half that really sort of changed my thinking around how do we hire people, how do we recruit people, how do we build the team. So to tell you the story, about, July last year, we got reached out to by a guy called Patrick. He was actually working at Uber in New York as one of the tech recruiters there. He actually had an Austrian wife. So the TourRadar company is headquartered in Vienna. For those of you who don't know, we do have an office in Toronto. We also have an office in Brisbane. We've got around 200 people today. But Patrick basically joined at a very different time. So what I wanted to kind of give advice on was build a recruitment engine early. It was kind of some advice that I didn't really think about. I really just, you're in the trenches, you're trying to work out how do you do supply, how do you do demand, how do you do payments, how do you do customer support, how do you do all the elements of your marketplace, but you just sort of have this recruiting and hiring thing on the side, and you don't really put a lot of focus on it. But when you actually think about it, we were a team of 75 people. We were a Series A startup, hiring 2 or 3 people a month. Basically, our managers and myself were doing all of the writing the job descriptions, putting on LinkedIn ads, doing the screening phone calls, doing basically every part of the process. And it's time consuming, and it's something you don't factor into your everyday work. You kind of just do it because you have to, and you know you need people. But where we are today, we're a Series C startup. We've got 200 employees. We hire 20 people a month at the moment, basically for the last 5 months. We have 4 people in recruitment. And it's a really, source-driven candidate structure now. So we really look at, who are the people we want to target, and we reach out and we really actively go for these people. And we don't just wait for passive or active people coming to us. We seek out really world-class talent, to actually bring them into our marketplace. So the lesson learned here is that you've got only so much time in a day. Your leadership team, who are your most valuable people, they're the ones typically who will be doing all of these screenings, all of these interviews. Just think about how much time they could be spending on your product or on other parts of the business where that's their expertise. So pretty much think about hiring a recruiter very, very early, So bring someone on who might cost you 30,000, might cost you 40,000 euros a year, but that person is going to take a ton of work away, and hopefully that 30 or 40,000 euros in cost is going to be paid back in a lot more value with your leadership team and your other team members being able to focus on certain things. So just to give you an idea of how our process works now, we've got a very consistent, measurable, and bias-free interview process now. We do the screening interview with the recruiter, so it doesn't take up time from the hiring manager or anything like that. We do a test case if it's needed, so if it's tech or if it's product, we do send a test case because we do want people to see how they work under pressure. We give them a time pressure as well. And then we have an interview with the hiring manager. And then finally, I still do the final interview. So pretty much for everyone except for customer support, just because we do hire quite a lot of customer support people. I try and do the final interview just for culture check, and also just to see a sense check of how they're going to fit into the organization. And then finally, we have a debrief with all the people in the company who interviewed, who were involved in that process, and then we actually, agree to either go ahead or not. We also implemented some software which really helped with this, called Lever. Not sure if anyone is using that now, but if you're not, consider it. It's really good for structuring how you're giving feedback, how you're actually putting people through the funnel, and it's super useful for having an overview of the whole process. The other thing I like to look at is, we spend so much time on our marketing funnel. We look at every part of it to optimize it, yet hiring, we don't at all. We literally just look at it and we just kind of, have we got someone in the job or not? And we don't even look at, did we do a good job of getting back to them on time? Did we do a good job of, in the test case, reviewing it on time back when we put a deadline for them? Do we then get back to them in a certain deadline? So we very much look at each step and we do reflect on that and see where can we improve, and we actually track the funnel from first contact or people reaching out to us right down to actually first to the offer that actually goes out after I've had the final interview and actually get the candidate in the door. So yeah, recommended early hires. So recruiters definitely recommend someone. They've got to reflect you, they've got to reflect your, beliefs, your culture. They've got to understand what you're doing, because you think about it, they're outselling you and your vision and the business. So you have to make sure that person you hire isn't too junior, who people won't respect or won't actually take seriously. So that's pretty important on that front. Another one that we've found is product managers. So you might have already done this, but the more product managers we brought in and experienced people, so people from Google or other places that have done this type of thing before, really, really helps, in terms of getting stuff out the door and shipping. So it's like a major uplift in terms of, long-term scalability of the company to have people who have done this before. So yeah, product managers are gold for helping move things forward. Business analysts, this is an area we massively under invested in. We're just catching up to it now, but really try and get people early as you can, because without the data, you can't make the right decisions in any part of your business. And that could be customer support, it could be business development, it could be in marketing. So, really try and uncover these people, because they are like unicorns, to find good ones, and really try and, find them in universities or wherever else you can to get people who are young, enthusiastic, and just smart people. UX designers, the guys at Uber before just discussed that, the product itself has to be good, it has to be usable, it has to be something people want to use. And something we found is, try not to hire people from agencies as such. Really try and actually get people who have experience with e-commerce and know the balance between theoretical, something that's really nicely designed, to actually that performs. So that's a very, very critical part of things. For those of you who are interested, Patrick actually wrote a great Medium article summarizing kind of everything I just spoke about in a lot more detail. But yeah, it's a great read. So if you want to have a look at how we've actually built that funnel and that recruitment engine, it's pretty interesting and definitely something for some earlier stage startups to look at. All right, so supply, that's the one that seems obvious, and for sure it is, but there's certain aspects of supply that pretty much in the first early days, my brother and I, who founded the company, we went out and we onboarded tons of supply. So we basically cold called, we went to travel shows, we onboarded about 300, 400, 500 tour operators, and we thought, look, okay, supply, tick, we've basically done that part of the marketplace. So then we moved on to the demand side and thought, okay, let's focus on the demand. And so the investors kept telling us, keep focusing on supply. You haven't quite got it right. And we're like, no, we've got plenty of supply. We've got 20,000 tours. We don't need more. It's totally fine. But it wasn't until we got the demand side right, we started to actually get liquidity in the marketplace, and we started to grow both sides and realize that there were some lessons that we should have probably listened to earlier, and it probably would have unlocked the marketplace, earlier than we actually did. So the first one is more suppliers equals more listings equals more landing pages. And for those of you, so this is more of a web-based marketplace rather than an app marketplace, is the way we are. So organic traffic is super important. And if you don't get that organic traffic, obviously paid traffic alone is expensive, and you can't actually have that blended CAC to actually balance out the costs of paid acquisition. So really building out the listings helps with creating very targeted landing pages to build out what you can actually drive traffic to. The thing that actually we saw as well is that it soaks up conversion. So you don't really realize it, but you'll have visitors coming to your site that are just bouncing. They're just not finding what you want. And until you put something that actually they want to see and find, then they actually start to say, this is interesting for me, and then they start to actually buy and engage with your site. And we really saw that. So we focused on luxury products about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and we onboarded a bunch of supply around that. And when we did that, we didn't change anything in our marketing, we didn't do any more targeting, but we just started getting bookings for these high-value products because we were actually providing a product that they wanted to find. Bounce rates went down, and obviously conversions went up. So it really starts to kind of, you think of a sponge and it starts to fill the holes in the sponge by actually adding more supply in there. One other thing is a brand association. So something we did early, which I think was quite a good idea, was to get a lot of the big brands on. So if you're in your space, you've got public perception from your customers. So they know who the big brands are in your space. So getting those guys on early gives you credibility because you've got basically association. Well, they're working with TourRadar. TourRadar must be a decent marketplace, and then they start to trust other products in the marketplace. So really try and get those big brands on. Some will just reject you, like they just say, we're not interested because they have the brand and the authority and everything. Eventually they come around, so we're finding now some of the companies who really, didn't really want to work with us. They said, we don't want to do this online thing. We're quite happy with the offline travel agents and our own distribution. But now when they hear the number of bookings that their competitors are getting and seeing us grow, they are actually coming to us now and actually saying, yep, we want to be on board. So it's definitely worth your time and effort. Other one is reviews. I think it's something that probably doesn't get focused on enough, and it really has a big lever in terms of actually driving conversion. So I think we all know that you go to an Amazon page, you go to any page where there's a listing with reviews and a listing without reviews, 9 times out of 10 you're going to take the one with reviews. So even if there's only a couple, it definitely helps in terms of conversion. So really try and focus on user-generated content, get photos if it's relevant for you, get photos added to those reviews as well. It definitely helps. Automation is definitely very, very important, but the thing is you just shouldn't do it too early. So when we first built TourRadar, we made the whole back end for tour operators self-service, so they could do everything themselves, they could load all the products. They just didn't use it. We had no demand. So pretty much they were like, well, why should I spend my time uploading my content? Why should I do all this if I have no idea how this is going to work? So we had to go back. We had to then invest into a content team to actually then, do the uploading and the adding of the listings ourselves and curation. But eventually you work it out and there's a bit of a tipping point and then it's time to actually hit the gas. So that's where we've kind of, earlier this year, we got quite a lot of things right. And then we actually really started to, you can see the inflection point there around April, May. We started to say, okay, let's hit the gas. We started to automate a lot of the stuff. And now it's really starting to pay off for us. So as the guys from Uber also said, fragmentation is a good thing about a marketplace, and being able to onboard as many of those tour operators for us is super valuable for defensibility, and actually making sure that we keep building out that defensibility, but also providing the best selection for our customers to choose from. So, I think I missed a slide there. No, it's not showing. Okay. So attribution is the next one. This funnel, everyone hopefully should be comfortable with. It's the Dave McClure R funnel. Definitely something you should be very, very, very comfortable with, and to know it exactly for your business. How does it look in terms of each stage and the drop-off and the conversion rates, and how can you optimize each of those, which is great. We all think that success might be looking like this, but it's not. It's more like that. There's a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing, a lot of A/B testing, and it's super critical for the success of you actually working out what works and what doesn't. Big challenge for all of us is we just don't have one device anymore. So when we first started, we were pretty much just desktop, and now obviously we have to go into the other devices. And for a very considered purchase like us, so the average basket is $2,000. The record booking we've had is $95,000. So this is not something you just basically click and book. So it could be 50 days from the first touch to actually the booking, and they could be on their work computer, they could be on their laptop coming home from the bus, they could be jumping around all the different devices. And if you can't track that, or if you can't actually marry up those people, you don't know where your marketing spend's going. You don't know, are you spending money again to reacquire that customer? So it's super important to consider the devices and different ways people are connecting with you. Hopefully everyone has seen this before, the different models. Whether you understand them or not, it's not so easy to understand, but it is something you do need to look at. Last touch is pretty much the default one that most people use in Google Analytics. For us, it's a very misleading one, because again, 50 days before that someone actually clicks through to our site from a paid ad on their mobile device, they're then coming through from an email we sent them on their desktop to then complete the booking. How do we just attribute that to email, or do we actually say that paid had some influence on that? And that really affects how you actually, spend your money and where you put your focus in terms of optimizing and product and that sort of stuff. Just hang on a sec. So this is actually a real life story. Reality sinks in. You're basically fundraising. You reach out to a bunch of VCs, and then you finally get an email like this back. And so you're super stoked. You're like, yes, finally got it. You know, we're through to getting through to the next round, and we're actually digging into it. And then you kind of keep reading down the email, and then they start to ask for things like this. And all that stuff, CPC performance by channel, user segmentation, attribution analysis if you have it. And then they ask for historical sales data. Hopefully this is off the shelf. Of course it's not. And then cohorts would be great. What the fuck are cohorts? And then customer service. See whatever you track to capture this, let us know what you track today. Pretty much nothing. So you've started off super happy. You're like, yes, I'm going to get this investment and everything. And then you get to the bottom of this and your heart's in your stomach. You know, you're basically just like, shit, how am I actually going to get this to them in a timely manner? So this happened. This was a well-known VC in London. So it was like, you know, a huge thing for us. And we just had to spend literally a week digging out what we could, you know. So we really pulled stuff out and we really tried to get the data. But it's a really big lesson, and I'd say start to do things early and really capture the data. Whether you know what to do with it now, just start. Like, you know, really just build something out, learn what's a data warehouse look like. You know, how can I actually capture this stuff so that sometime in the future I can use it. So preferably, you know, those things that are on that slide and the questions they ask, you should have a handle on that because it helps you actually model your business. But you're so busy doing so many things that you just don't know about it. And if it's the first time you've done a marketplace, a lot of those things you've never heard of and you've actually never done. So it gives you a bit of a steering, but also it kind of shows you, look, I need to track everything I can as early as I can, because otherwise, you know, when I get asked for this data, because you need funding, you need to be able to scale, you need to show that you're on top of everything, you know, and you're actually going to impress the investor rather than saying, look, I'll get back to you in 2 or 3 weeks when we can actually provide it. And that's another thing, is that if you don't have a data room now, like if you don't actually have like a Google Drive or a Dropbox where you actually are storing a bunch of stuff, you know, as you go, do it. Like, you know, really look up, how do you create a data room that VCs want to have? Because when you can provide that and actually just send that straight through once you get an email like that, it's super impressive because it shows that you're on top of what you're actually doing and not just basically, you know, always reacting. You're actually proactive in this stuff. So yeah, understand Google Analytics, definitely become an expert at it. Attribution models, it's confusing, but really try and understand it. And yeah, try and understand what cohorts are. Like some, you know, when I first heard it, I had no idea. But yeah, really understand, you know, how does that help me with my product as well? You know, do I need to focus on retention? Do I not? And then actually, how do I improve that over time as well? And show those curves so that when the investors ask, you can actually show it as well. Building a growth team, something we did was actually, we pulled together about 5 or 6 key people in the team, and we actually had like product, we had marketing, myself, I also sat in there, and weekly we had basically these sprints of A/B testing. So when you look at that R funnel and you look at what's actually in there, do it on a weekly basis, really religiously try and improve something every week. And if you don't do that, you fall into the trap of, you know, not releasing fast enough, not testing fast enough. And that was a critical time for us around 2016, where we did that for like 9 months every week, and our conversion rates improved. You know, everything basically started to massively improve because of that. So put focus on a growth element of the business. Marketing automation. So, you know, on the back of Attribution, we built a tool for ourselves because we actually, you know, didn't find something off the shelf. But marketing automation is definitely needed. And for those of you who think that email is dead, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's basically the key and the way to get people on their phones. They're checking their email on their phones. They're actually e-commerce, and for a high basket size product like us, bringing people back and reminding them about us is super important. So definitely, make sure that you consider email and you really look at drip campaigns and trigger emails and that sort of thing, because it really helps with, bringing people back and conversion and that type of thing. So to wrap up, just the 3 main points. People, try and find a recruiter early. If you don't have a recruitment team in your company now and you are a decent size, invest in it. It really does help from the quality of people and also just the, relieving your key people from daily chores and different things that aren't their core business. Then we have the supply side. Yeah, look at, don't just think that you've got enough supply. You can always improve it as well. You can curate the listings better. You can improve the content, but make it basically something that scales so that you can basically, soak up that supply and that demand coming to your site and actually get people converting rather than bouncing and never coming back to you. And then finally, attribution. Really try to understand your data. Do it again early. Don't ignore it. Make time for it because it's really key to success of the company, but also in the impressing investors and actually getting that funding that you need as well. And that's basically it. Thank you very much. Any questions?
So thanks a lot for sharing, Travis. Very, very impressive what you've built with TourRadar. You spoke a bit about supply, and what I'd be interested in is you'd have to balance supply and demand for proper liquidity. So what are the kind of metrics or ratios that you look at?
I wouldn't say there's any specific. I think you look at the way we like to look at it was around corridors. So we actually looked at, for us anyway, it was like a source market and a destination. And then we looked at, we did a ton of research into Google AdWords. We did a ton of research into keyword research to see what was being searched for and what didn't we have on the site. Or maybe we didn't have enough listings on those pages. And we saw that bounce rate was higher, conversion was lower when they had a certain amount of listings. And then we tried to basically increase that and monitor it over time to see where does that, not inflection point happen, but where does the metric start to change. So we really kind of tried to consider it from corridors, but then also conversion and different metrics on site. So.
Okay, thanks.
Just over here.
I actually have a question. Oh, sorry. You were talking about the importance of reviews. Any specific insights on how to get them? I mean, I could imagine that in your case, people are very passionate about traveling. So like building a community around that and then having people post like really detailed reviews about their travel is something that could work, but just any specific strategies or tips on how to get them? Yeah,
the tip is to get it as early as possible. The longer you leave it from the trip, the less chance that the person's going to actually want to do it. Like if you think about yourself, you go on a holiday, you've had an amazing time, you want to shout out about it, you want to tell people about it. So, and you're in the moment, you've had that experience, you're on that high. So as soon as, like the longer you go away from that point, the less chance they're going to write about it. So whether it's push notifications, whether it's emails, whether it's on the tour itself, so at the end of it, there's a bunch of different ways you can try. But it is difficult, especially with the plethora of like reviews.io and Trustpilot and FIFO out there. A lot of the tour operators that we have are starting to use those now. And they're saying, well, we have other distributors as well. We don't want to sell have our reviews on TourRadar only. We want to have an independent platform. But when they get bookings, because they've got more reviews, they start to lean in more. So it's a bit of a kind of balance. And you sort of just say, send most of your traffic to FIFO or to Trustpilot, but get some reviews to TourRadar as well. So it's kind of a balancing act. Yeah.
Thanks. I have a question. Most probably you would have, you had in the past quite moderate conversion rate when you start the platform. First, what 3 major points you made internally, externally to rise it up? And the second, what was the average conversion rate when you start the platform? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I'm not going to give out the exact conversion rates, but no, a couple of things was around content on site. So if you think about, you come to a trip, sorry, step back. When I first started TourRadar, pretty much everyone said to me, you can't sell a $5,000 experience online. You need to have a travel agent sitting across from you to tell you all the details and build the trust. So it was about getting enough content and contextual information on the site. So the more contextual information we had on the site and the better UX we had on the main pages, that had a major uplift. So if you look at all the different parts of the content on that, say, tour detail page, every bit of content we added increased conversion, basically. So obviously too much is too much, but we get a lot of feedback from people saying, at first TourRadar seems very cluttered, but once I get into the process, all the information I need to know to make my decision. So it's kind of how do you display that information at the right time through the customer journey. So if they come at a very top level funnel, try and reduce it down. As they get further down, provide them with more information. So. Anything else? Nope. Oh, one more. Yeah.
Congrats, Travis. You didn't talk about competition. You have any relevant competition, or you were brand new in the category? Thanks.
Yeah, no, there's always competition. There's definitely parallel competition directly in what we're doing in terms of fixed itinerary. So where we pull in Ventures and Kentucky and have fixed departure dates with fixed prices, that sort of thing. There's not a lot of competition around. There's a few copycats now coming out and copying what we're doing on the front end, but a lot of stuff on the back end. We have over 200 connections with different tour operators, and that's legacy systems, that's reservation platforms, that's our own dashboard. So the supply side is a super complex part of it. So that's not something you can do overnight. None of the big guys are really doing it yet. So Expedia, Booking, Trip, they haven't really looked at it. They're starting to consider it. They're starting with the likes of Get Your Guide, type products. So, the day tour and in destination, that sort of thing. But there's a bunch of companies out there. Evaneos in France, they're a more tailor-made marketplace. Tourlane here in Berlin's popped up. There's Tripania as well. So there's a few doing things in similar areas, but not exactly what we're up to. Anything else? One more? Yeah. Last one. Yeah.
Last question. Yeah. First of all, congratulations on what you have done. I have a question. How did you onboard the supply side at the beginning? You went to the field and onboarded one-to-one, or?
Pretty much. So it was my brother and I. So we went around, we went to a travel show in London, and we walked up to every single stand, and we basically said, we're an online platform, doesn't cost you anything to be in, do you want to be on board? And they're like, yeah, sure. There was no cost, so I was like, well, let's try it out. We also did cold calls. We had a bit of inbound requests because of our SEO. We were quite strong. But yeah, it was a very manual process. We also did some screen scraping. So we just went to websites and actually got tour content, and then we created a profile for the operator. We emailed them and say, hey, do you want this? 9 times out of 10, they said, yeah, sure. The one would say, get it off, get rid of my content. Why have you got that? But typically they weren't so angry about it, and they actually were like, well, let's try this out and see if it works. So it was quite manual, but over time it started to automate, and that's where you see the inflection point, where we actually started to really scale things up. So, cool. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.